At some point he stopped, not dramatically, not with a decision he remembers making, he just stopped. Stopped reaching out when things got heavy, stopped telling people when something was wrong. Stopped expecting that saying it out loud would produce anything other than discomfort in the person he said it to. And the stopping became so habitual so quickly that within months it was invisible, even to him. He was not someone who did not ask for help. He was just someone who did not need it. That is what he told himself, that is what he told everyone. And everyone believed him because he made it very easy to believe. There is a specific moment in the life of almost every man that nobody talks about, the moment he asked for help and something went wrong. Not necessarily something dramatic, sometimes it was simply the quality of the response, the way the person he told became uncomfortable, the way the conversation shifted from his pain to their management of his pain, the way he could feel himself becoming a burden in real time, watching the other person's eyes change from present to managing. And the specific humiliation of that shift, of needing something and watching the person you needed it from wish you had not said anything. He filed that moment away, not consciously. The nervous system filed it. Under this does not work. Under this produces a worse outcome than silence. Under the cost of asking is higher than the cost of carrying it alone. And from that moment forward, the asking became less frequent, the silence became more practiced, the carrying became more total. Until one day he realized he could not remember the last time he had told anyone anything real, not because nothing real was happening. Because the pathway between the real thing and the speaking of it had quietly closed. The neuroscience of male social bonding reveals something that explains this pattern with uncomfortable precision. Research published in the journal Hormones and Behavior identified a fundamental difference in how the male and female nervous system responds to social stress. Women under stress show increased activation of the tend and befriend response, a neurological drive toward connection, communication, and the seeking of social support. Men under the same level of stress show increased activation of the fight or flight response, a neurological drive toward action, withdrawal, or confrontation, not because men are emotionally simpler. Because the male nervous system was shaped by evolutionary pressures that rewarded self-sufficiency under threat and punished vulnerability in the presence of others. This is not an excuse, it is an explanation of the terrain. The man who stopped asking for help is not failing at something that should come naturally to him. He is succeeding at something his entire biological and cultural formation trained him to do: manage it alone, show nothing, keep functioning. Do not let the group see the wound, because a wounded man in the wrong context is a liability and somewhere in the oldest layers of his nervous system. He knows this and responds accordingly. The problem is that the context changed, the savannah is gone, the threat is not a predator. The wound is not physical, the group is not a hunting party that needs every member at full capacity, but the nervous system does not know this. The nervous system received its instructions millions of years ago, and it is running them faithfully in a world that no longer matches the conditions they were designed for. And the man is paying the price of that mismatch in the specific currency of progressive isolation. The slow withdrawal from genuine connection that feels like self-sufficiency and functions like slow suffocation. Jung identified what happens to a man who carries everything alone for long enough. He called it the inflation of the shadow. When a man has no outlet for what he carries, no relationship through which the genuine interior life can move. What is inside does not remain static, it accumulates, it grows heavier and more distorted in the dark. The things that could have been processed through honest conversation, through being genuinely witnessed by another person, through the simple act of saying this is what is happening and having someone receive it, instead remain unprocessed, compressing, building pressure in the specific way that unacknowledged things build pressure when they have nowhere to go. And the man who appears most self-sufficient, the one who never asks, never needs, never shows the weight, is often the man carrying the most compressed version of this accumulated interior pressure. The one closest to the moment when the structure gives way, because the structure was never designed to hold everything forever. It was designed to hold things long enough for them to be shared. When the sharing never comes, the structure holds longer than it should, and then does not hold at all. Research on social isolation in men confirms this at the physiological level. Men with low social connection show elevated cortisol levels, reduced immune function, increased cardiovascular risk, and significantly higher rates of depression that goes undiagnosed and untreated because it does not present in the ways that diagnostic criteria, developed primarily through research on female populations, are designed to detect. Male depression does not usually look like sadness. It looks like irritability, like withdrawal, like working longer hours, like drinking more. Like the man who is fine, always fine, until the day he very suddenly is not. There was a man who had not told anyone anything real in 11 years. He knew this precisely because he could identify the last time he had a conversation with a friend at 29 that had not gone the way he needed it to go, and that had quietly closed something in him that had never fully reopened. He was not lonely in the way loneliness is usually described. He had people around him, a marriage, friends he met regularly, colleagues who liked him. He functioned in social settings with complete apparent ease. He was good company. People described him as easy to be around. What none of them knew was that easy to be around was the performance he had refined over 11 years of ensuring that nothing real enough to be uncomfortable ever surfaced in his presence. He had become extraordinarily skilled at the social surface, at conversation that was warm and engaging and completely without depth, at being present in a way that produced connection for everyone else in the room while requiring nothing genuine from him. He described it once, in the one session where something broke through, as being a very good host at a party in a house he had never actually been inside. He could make everyone comfortable. He knew exactly how to manage the space. He just had no idea what was actually in the rooms. The language of a man who stopped asking for help is one of the most precisely constructed languages in human communication. Every phrase in it is designed to do one thing: end the conversation before it reaches anything real. He says I am just tired when he means something is wrong that I do not have words for and am not sure I am allowed to have. He says work has been busy when he means I have been using work to avoid being alone with what I am actually feeling. He says I am fine when he means I stopped checking a long time ago, and fine is what I say when I have no access to the real answer. He says I do not want to talk about it when he means I want to talk about it more than almost anything, but I do not know how to start, and I am not sure you can hold it, and I cannot handle watching you try and fail, because that will be worse than the silence. He says I have got it when he means I do not have it, but asking for help costs something I cannot currently afford to pay, and I would rather continue not having it than pay that cost. Every phrase is a door closed gently, politely, with enough warmth that the person on the other side does not feel shut out, just not quite let in. And the man on the inside of all these closed doors is not protecting himself from the people outside them. He is protecting them from the discomfort of what is inside, and in doing so he is ensuring that what is inside never moves, never gets lighter, never gets processed by the only mechanism that actually processes it, being genuinely witnessed by another person who can hold it without needing it to be different. John Cacioppo spent 20 years studying loneliness at the University of Chicago. What he found dismantled the idea that loneliness is simply about being alone. His research showed that the most damaging form of loneliness is not physical isolation. It is the loneliness of being surrounded by people while being genuinely unknown to any of them. The loneliness of performing connection without experiencing it, of being in relationship while remaining fundamentally unreached. This is the loneliness of the man who stopped asking for help. He is not alone, he is unreachable. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a problem that time and circumstance might solve and a wound that gets deeper. With every interaction that confirms it, every conversation that stays on the surface, every person who accepts the fine without pushing, every social exchange that produces the appearance of connection without any of the substance. Cacioppo's research showed that chronic loneliness of this kind produces measurable changes in gene expression, activating inflammatory processes and reducing antiviral responses in ways that mirror the physiological effects of actual physical illness. The body does not distinguish between the wound of genuine isolation and the wound of being isolated inside apparent connection. Both register as threat, both produce the same cascade of physiological stress responses, both kill with the same quiet efficiency. The man who stopped asking for help is not being strong, he is being slowly harmed by what he believes is strength. Jung described the cure for this, not in clinical terms, but in the language he always returned to when he was being most honest about what actually heals a human being. He said the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Not information exchange, not advice, not the management of another person's pain, transformation. The specific thing that happens when two people are genuinely present with each other. When one person brings the real thing, and the other person receives it without flinching, without fixing, without making it about their own discomfort, and something in both of them shifts as a result. The man who stopped asking for help stopped because he had not experienced this enough times to trust it. He had experienced the other version enough times to stop trying, the conversation that became about the other person's feelings about his feelings. The advice that arrived before he had finished speaking, the fixing that felt like being told the problem he had was not the problem he should have. The discomfort that appeared on the other person's face, and that he had to then manage in addition to everything he had brought to the conversation. He does not need more of that. What he needs, what every man who has stopped asking needs, is the experience of being genuinely received, once, clearly enough to remember it, by someone who can hold the real thing without needing it to be different or smaller or more manageable than it actually is. That experience does not require a therapist, it does not require a specific kind of relationship, it requires one thing: a person willing to stay present with what is actually there, without immediately trying to make it go away. And a man willing to risk showing what is actually there one more time after all the times it did not work. The man who stopped asking for help did not make a mistake, he made a rational decision based on the evidence available to him at the time. The evidence said this is not safe, the evidence said this costs more than it returns. The evidence said silence is more manageable than the alternative. The evidence was right for those specific situations with those specific people. In those specific moments where asking produced something worse than silence. The evidence is not right about every situation, with every person, in every moment. And the decision that was made from that evidence, the quiet closing of the pathway between the interior reality and the expression of it, has now been running long enough and completely enough that the man has lost the ability to distinguish between the situations where it is still right and the situations where it is costing him everything it was designed to protect. Jung called this the work of individuation, not the dramatic transformation, the slow, patient, uncomfortable rebuilding of access to what was closed, the gradual reopening of the pathway between what is real and what is expressed, the finding through careful, honest, repeated experience that there are people and moments where showing the real thing does not produce the outcome that made him stop, where the cost is not what he learned to expect, where being received is actually possible. That work is not weakness. It is the most difficult thing available to a man who has spent years building the most impressive possible architecture of self-sufficiency around a wound that self-sufficiency cannot heal. The wound that requires another person to heal. The one he stopped asking for help with. The one he is still carrying. The one that is still waiting, with the specific patience of something that has nowhere else to go. For the moment he finally decides that trying one more time is worth the risk of what trying costs. It is worth it, it has always been worth it. He just forgot because nobody reminded him, because he made it too easy for everyone around him to forget to ask.